We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 version of One Crucial Thing. My name is Todd Fetterman, and I'm the Managing Director of North Coast Ventures. We are thrilled to have had over 600 people register for this event. For those of you not familiar with North Coast, we are made up of over 250 individual investors in 6 separate funds. We've invested in 59 startups, with most of them being seed stage, B2B, software as a service ventures. We feel that our strongest asset is the power of our network, so we're especially pleased to have so many presenters tonight from the ranks of our member base, our portfolio, our corporate partners, and our co-investors. The topics tonight will all be related to COVID-19 and how startups and investors can work through the related health and economic crises. The presenters' insights will be powerful by the nature of who they are and the roles they play. Imagine being the CIO of the Cleveland Cavaliers after the NBA season was suspended. Imagine being the CEO of Metro Health Hospital System, planning for massive increases in ER visits and ICU utilization. Imagine being the CSO of Assurant, a leading pre-employment screening company during a 60-day span when 30 million unemployment claims were filed. And lastly, imagine being an investor with more than 40 active portfolio companies that simultaneously have to reassess and reforecast based on unprecedented global pandemic. The task of building and scaling great startups is daunting even in good times. In the current COVID crisis, it is doubly so. As we hear so much about the country opening back up, it strikes me that our startups never really closed in the first place. Sure, they were disrupted. They shifted to 100% remote work. They had to endure challenges related to their teams, their investors, and their customers, but they never shut down. In fact, they doubled down on leadership, perseverance, and empathy, because that's what startup leaders do. In a few moments, I'm going to hand off to the first of 23 presenters. They're participating from across the country, including San Francisco, New York, Boston, Chicago, Boulder, and of course, right here in Cleveland. To increase the degree of difficulty for all of our presenters, we're asking everyone to deliver their insights in 2 minutes or less. Good luck, everyone. After our last presenter, we're going to ask that all of you complete a poll to indicate your favorite insight of the event. The winning presenter will get to direct a $1,000 donation to the COVID-19 related nonprofit of their choice. So far, candidate organizations include the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, COVID-19 Rapid Response Fund, Metro Health Foundation, Digital C, and Empowering Youth Exploring Justice, Build.org, and College Now's Student Emergency Fund. For those of you that are passionate about supporting great organizations like this, we have another opportunity to add to the $1,000 that we are donating. Just go to the App Store and download an app called Mizzou, M-E-Z-U, and you can donate to the Money Box for North Coast Ventures. Mizzou is one of our portfolio companies, and they have agreed to waive all the fees so that 100% of any donations will be passed through to the nominated nonprofit. Again, just go to the App Store and download Mizzou to get started. After our last 2-minute presentation, when the votes are being tallied, we'll hear from our last speaker of the night, noted futurist Laura Nissen. Laura will help put the insights we've just heard into context and help us understand how futures thinking can better position startups for success in an uncertain world. Before we get started, I'd like to thank PNC, our sponsor for tonight and our sponsor for the full 2020 Investor Insight Series. As many of you know, PNC has a strong commitment to economic development and the entrepreneurial community, so it's a natural for them to support an event like this. Over the past several years, I've gotten to know Pat Pastore, PNC's regional president, as well as John Beer and Dave Leger, who lead the PNC Wealth Management and Hawthorne groups. I can't say enough about the support and partnership that they've provided to North Coast and our broader community. Please know that I'm always happy to make introductions if any of you have questions about your personal wealth management. Thanks again to PNC, not only for their sponsorship of this event, but their broader partnership and support of the entrepreneurial community.
Let's get started. My name is Daniel Luketic. I am the director of North Coast Ventures, and I'm going to help moderate this session. Just a quick caveat before on the format before we get started. We have never hosted a Zoom event this big before. With 24 presenters, we have a pretty crowded Zoom room, and we will be navigating a few technical and executional challenges along the way. So if we hit a snag, please bear with us. the show will go on. Todd has assured me that he can juggle for 2 minutes if needed, if we need somebody to step in a pinch for some entertainment. Lean Ajluni as well, our investment associate, is working closely with the presenters behind the scenes, prepare them and make sure the evening runs smoothly. Our first 2 presenters actually pre-recorded due to scheduling, and so we will start with those. So without further ado, it gives me pleasure to introduce our first presenter of the evening, Adam Bain, who is the former COO of Twitter, and he will share about the power of optimism.
Thanks, and hi, everybody. If I were to give you one crucial thing that founders or operators or investors should keep in mind in these challenging times, it's about the incredible power of optimism. The pessimists would try and forget this whole entire year, but for us optimists, 2020 is now officially unforgettable, and anyone trying to run a business in this environment deserves a lot of credit. It's easy to be a cynic right now, but I hope you fight hard against cynicism and hold on tight to a vision of building something better. We need your energy and your ideas now more than ever. You know, the amazing thing about hopeful people is that they create a positive reality, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. So be that person, a person of hope. And when I say optimism, I'm not just talking about some positive thinking. It's deeper than that. It's about not keeping your head down and not succumbing or accepting things as they are. Instead, optimism is knowing that you have the power to make change, but then also getting up out of the dirt, looking up, and doing it. There are great examples of bold optimism out there for you to emulate. Let me leave you with one about Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, and probably one of the best investors and business people alive. You know, late in life, Charlie had terrible cataracts that required surgery, and he was in so much agony that he had his eye completely removed to make the pain stop. Years later, he developed another eye condition in his only remaining eye, and doctors told Charlie that he was likely going to lose sight in that one too. Now, Charlie's work revolves entirely around reading. He thrives on it, and he said his happiness does as well. Charlie was actually staring down this reality of blindness, and that's when he chose to take an optimistic view on life. Well, he said, this is an opportunity for me to learn Braille. And then he started taking Braille lessons. This type of positive determination is the unlock. Your version of learning Braille may be deciding that now's the time to volunteer for a cause you believe in, or to try and start a company, or to try and change an industry, or rededicate yourself to learning. As a friend once told me, us optimists also suffer from a healthy dyslexia around the word no. We see the word no as on. So my one crucial thing for you is optimism. You have the choice and the power to embrace the opportunity in everything.
Fantastic. Next, coming to us from the middle of a pasture somewhere, is Brad Feld, the managing director of the Foundry Group, and he will present 3 crises.
Hi there, I'm Brad Feld, a partner at Foundry Group and a co-founder at Techstars. And my one crucial thing to talk about is the idea that we're in the midst of 3 crises. We've been talking about the COVID crisis, and the COVID crisis is actually 3 crises. The first is a health crisis, which is COVID, a pandemic unlike anything we've seen in our lifetime. The second crisis is an economic crisis that's been triggered by the health crisis, which is unusual because most economic or financial crises are generally triggered by financial dynamics or other sort of macroeconomic events. In this particular case, our economy was very, very strong going into the pandemic. And in the absence of the health crisis, we would be unlikely to be having a financial crisis. Those 2 things, though, really trigger a third crisis, which is a mental health crisis. We're not used to, as human beings, being stuck in our houses for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've had many of our social dynamics completely disrupted. We've had to change the way we live our lives in profound ways, and it's created an incredible amount of stress on people across the entire dimension, regardless of what kind of resources you have. And so it's important to recognize that we're going through these three crises simultaneously. And if I leave you with one thing to pay attention today, it's to really work and make sure you pay attention to your own mental health and the mental health of the people around you. Go outside, breathe the air, be safe, but know that we really are in the midst of this incredible conflation of these three crises. And taking care of yourself first and your mental health is critically important.
Great. Now we are going to transition to our live speakers. Next, we have Mark Roberge. Mark is the former CRO of HubSpot, and he will share the biggest regret people have in looking back at past uncertain times. So take it away, Mark.
All right, thanks, Daniel. You can hear me?
Yes.
I thought Brad was about to milk a cow or something. That was pretty intense. Yeah, I don't know how many of you were around in 08 and in 01. I was an individual contributor in 01. I was a leader in 08 as VP of Sales at HubSpot. And I'll tell you, a year later, and I would say a year after this, if we just categorize this as times of uncertainty, is people regretted not making a bolder reinvention of their business and themselves. And that will probably be the regret. And I know that's like reinvent, et cetera, pivot, et cetera, but it's just, I've yet to see an entrepreneur, business leader, or even general human being that's done it. I seek myself to pivot on a more deeper level. It's just so hard for us to disattach ourselves from all the investments that we've made leading up to COVID that are no longer relevant. How much hard work we did in learning our business, learning our craft that are now not relevant, and to rethink what that would look like in today's environment. So an example exercise to think about this weekend, for perhaps if you're a business owner, is pretend like you weren't at your business for the last 2, 3, 4 years. Pretend like you were parachuted in as the new CEO and you looked around at the resources you have, the product, the people, the staff, the customers, the partners, and how can that be optimized in the current context, in the current context that we have? And do your best to disattach yourself from, again, the investments that you've made. The same is true as an individual. We've got 900 students graduating from Harvard Business School as we speak, 200 of which I had in class. And you know, it's depressing if we think about what could have been with the job offers in February. But if we rethink what gifts we've been given as individuals and how those gifts need to be expressed in today's context, suddenly we shift this pessimistic mindset to an opportunistic one. So see if you can disattach yourself and reinvent yourself in the current context. Good luck.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we have Jen Neundorfer, Managing Partner of Jane VC, and she will present Leveling Up While Hunkering Down. Take it away, Jen.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see a bunch of you virtually. So not a day goes by in the last 3 months without more news of layoffs and hiring freezes. And the losses are broad and deep and impact every industry. Tech startups have collectively laid off about 56,000 people since the start of the pandemic, and Uber, Lyft, and Airbnb are 10,000 of them alone. We did a survey a month into COVID and found that 60% of startups were taking some action with respect to headcount, layoffs, hiring freezes, furloughs, the like. And this is the prudent thing to do. It's critical to manage runway and burn rates in a moment like this. But I'm here to urge founders that this is the exact time to think about hiring, and more specifically, up-leveling. And here's why. 2 things have happened in the last 3 months that fundamentally changed the game for startups. First, there's been a flood of highly talented people on the market. We went from one of the tightest labor markets suddenly to one with real slack in the system. As recently as February, it was hard, and some would actually probably say impossible, for early stage startups to hire the best talent. And today, some of the most talented people in tech are looking for jobs. Second, remote work is now mainstream. In the last 3 months, companies in every industry have proven that they can be productive remotely, and sometimes even more productive. Increasingly, big companies are telling people that they can work remotely for the long term. We've seen Twitter, Facebook, and Microsoft all announce that in the last 2 weeks. And people are leaving major cities and relocating throughout the country as the benefits of living in top-tier hubs become less obvious. So will people still go to an office? Yes, but distributed teams are here to stay. And so the result is that this is one of the most unique hiring markets startups have ever seen. And every startup should be making sure that they have a world-class team. And by world-class, I mean the skills and experience, but also the diversity of thought and experience. And it's well proven that diversity of background, whether it's age, gender, ethnicity, degree, all of that drives value. And that diversity of thought is particularly important in this unpredictable world. So for those of you that have a world-class team, well done. If not, there's never been a better time to go and build it. And it's easy to find these people. There are lists. Companies are helping the employees that they've laid off find new jobs. So yes, this is the time to be cautious of burn, but it's also the time to make sure that you have the best team in place to weather the storm and grow on the other side. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. Next up, we have Rodney Williams, the CCO of Listnr, who will be presenting the rise of contactless.
I'm Rodney Williams, a co-founder and commercial officer at Listnr. Listnr started about 8 years ago out of Cincinnati, Ohio, with this concept of leveraging ultrasonic technology as a way to send wireless information. But what we were really talking about was the rise of contactless technology. And the rise of contactless technology is associated with Listnr so much so because it's also a story of, I think, founder vision matched with technology. What COVID has shown over the past few months is the emergence of the contactless revolution that we've always envisioned. For example, 51% of consumers today find it useful or normal to do a buy online pickup experience or a self-checkout experience. That's up from single digits roughly 3 months ago. To give that perspective, the transaction size or volume that was associated with these types of contactless experience are up 400%. And it's a revolution in the way we shop, and it's a revolution in the way we're going to experience things forever. And what's interesting about that is when you start a company, you kind of have this broad vision and you create this technology, and your hope is that that technology and that vision meet the demand and a product market fit that results in acceleration and goals. So, my message for founders is to seek and find that vision during this moment for the product that you're trying to build. I know we like to use things like pivoting, but in my mind, it's more so about vision and making sure that you're aligned. And for investors, take the extra step in trying to predict versus the looking at past data as a reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Next up, we have Sue Tyler, the former CFO of Medical Mutual, presenting Bad News is Not Wine.
So bad news is not wine. It's not bourbon. Bad news does not get better with age. My one crucial thing is transparency. Transparency with employees, with board members, with investors, with customers. To me, a culture of transparency has never been more important. Leaders sometimes carry the burden of bad news longer than they should. Sometimes it's because of an incredible sense of personal responsibility. They're just out there trying to fix things. They don't want to disappoint or hurt others that are close to them. No one likes to be the bearer of bad news. It sucks when you know you need to reduce your workforce. It sucks when you know that you're going to miss a critical milestone or an important deadline. We all know people that bury their head in the sand. They ignore it and figure the problem might go away. But we also know that when we turn the music up in the car, so we can't hear the noise coming from the engine, that the problem with the engine is still there. We also know those people that take the weight of the world on their shoulders. They stay up nights, weekends, they're feverishly working. They are worrying, trying to make it right. But they deprive themselves and their companies of the creativity, the energy, and the support of others. Dealing with bad situations honestly, openly, and with empathy not only builds trust, it results in better business outcomes. My one crucial thing is transparency. In difficult times, more than ever, err on the side of over-communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Next up is Kris Beck, the CEO of Proformex. She will be presenting Cultivating Peak Performance. Take it away, Kris.
So even in the best of times, getting a startup off the ground can be grueling. And in today's environment, it's even tougher than ever. It's only through execution that an idea transforms into real revenue generating business. And the people that you choose to work with have the ability to make or break your business. So how do you build the best team? You might believe that building the best team means compiling the best people. Take the best engineer, a great MBA, throw in a PhD, and there you have it. The perfect team, right? Wrong. After leading and scaling dozens of teams, I can tell you, great teams do not happen spontaneously. Peak performance must be cultivated continuously. Just like growing a garden, both the individuals and the team together need to be nurtured to grow and work together. A key to cultivating a great team is the leader's ability to create psychological safety. Trust is really a must. When there's trust, there's safety in taking risks, candor and accountability, support and failure, respect and debate, and joy in winning together. Continuous cultivation means making sure you have the right individuals in the right role at the right time, being thoughtful about how different abilities and personalities and behaviors of each person can work together to create a team that is more than the sum of its parts. So as you grow and the needs of your business change, people will come and go. But if you continuously cultivate for peak performance, that's exactly what you'll get.
Great, thank you, Kris. Next, we have Akram Boutros, the CEO of Metro Health, presenting Courage to Fail and Trust.
Hi, everybody. So I think the biggest impediments that I've seen regarding success is that when people are afraid of failing. And the biggest tool that I've seen is when folks have courage to fail. And so we think about this in a couple of ways. One is that there's no success without failure. You have to learn from your mistakes. So we talk about failing effectively. That means you fail fast, you fail small, and you fail forward. So that would be the one thing that I would want people to focus on. But in order to have courage, you must have trust. You must trust the people around you. You must trust yourself that you will get better. So I would say is they're coupled together. The courage to fail and trusting yourselves and others are the key to my success and everyone else I've seen around. Even during this COVID crisis, as we began navigating uncharted territory, the reason Metro Health has been able to perform well and do everything it can for the community and our employees. And we're one of the few health systems in the entire region who has not cut staff, has not furloughed them, and we continue to give raises. It is because we have the courage to make mistakes, learn from them, and we also trust our staff. So that's my one thing for you.
Thank you, Akram. Next, we have Brad Owen, the CEO of NeverBounce. He'll be presenting Where Have the Shoemakers Gone?
Hey, thanks, Daniel. So I'd like to take us back 100 years. And ironically, we were also fighting a pandemic at that time, but that's not my topic. So on a Sunday morning 100 years ago, I'm strolling along a brick road. People are walking about. It's a beautiful day, and I'm just window shopping. And what I find peculiar is that each shop I pass offers something specific. There's a toy maker, there's a shoemaker, there's a blacksmith, a shop full of luggage and trunks, and they all seem so oddly specific. So I walk into the shoemaker shop and I notice three things. First thing I notice is the materials. From the finest leather to brass rivets imported from Europe, the materials were critical. The second thing I noticed were the tools. There's a whole wall of perfectly hung hammers in various sizes, from mallets to hole punctures. But the third thing that I noticed is not tangible, and it's something that made early craftsmanship in the Americas so unique. What made people so inherently good at what they did 100 years ago was focus. What all these shops had in common is that they all have found success in mastering their craft. Over the last 100 years, our tools and materials have changed, but yet we seem to have also forgotten the importance of focus. And while my favorite material today is a stack of MacBook Pros, and my favorite tools today are the software that I use, the key to any of our success has been pure and simple, and that's focus. And all the companies that I've run and the people that, the successful people I've met along the way, I've realized that the only true commonality of success amongst them was focus. As entrepreneurs, we see opportunity everywhere, in good times and in bad. But what makes us successful is not having opportunities, but focusing on the right ones. Don't dwell on your competitors. Don't start two companies at once. Pick one marketing strategy at a time and control your ambitions. Simply focus and master your craft. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. Next up, we have Ivy Zelman, the CEO of Zelman and Associates. She will be presenting single-family wins in post-COVID world.
Thank you. Well, I guess you would all be very surprised to hear that the overall new home market has actually been accelerating at a pretty robust pace. Initially, builders reported that orders declined as much as 50 to 75% when the economy shut down, which is what we all would have expected. But month to date, builders are now reporting that sales are flat to up double digits, despite the fact that more than 30 to 35 million people are unemployed. So what's going on? Well, prior to the pandemic, we actually had very, very strong new home sales. In fact, it was in 2019 was the best year of the recovery. And why is that? Well, millennials are finally aging into single family homes. In fact, as people get married and have babies, we know they need more space. So we have actually data that shows that those aged between 30 to 39 that are married with 2 or more children, over 80% of them actually live in a single family home. Now, while they don't all own those homes, because roughly 15 million actually rent, it's a tremendous tailwind as these 75 million millennials age. If we think about social behavior has already been shifting. As we look at some data from the Brookings Institute, many people think that the urban core is growing. Well, actually, the population, according to Brookings Institute, in the urban core has been decelerating since 2015, while it's been accelerating in the exurbs. Exurbs we refer to as the third ring of a major metropolitan market, and suburbs are growing as well. So this pandemic, I think, is only going to shift that behavior, call it on steroids, as more people move out to the burbs. Many surveys are indicating that 20 to 30 million Americans are going to move. So given record low mortgage rates, tight record inventories in the United States, and that demographic tailwind, we believe that housing will be the winner.
Thank you, Ivy. Next, we have Aaron Grossman, the CEO of TalentLaunch. He will be presenting the opposite of adversity is opportunity.
Hello, everyone. So the opposite of adversity is opportunity. Much of my entrepreneurial philosophy is centered around simplicity. Building my focus around simple concepts has helped me scale my vision throughout my career. Many of you experienced the Great Recession in 2009. The majority of us faced tremendous adversity during that time period. While this was a scary moment for me as an entrepreneur, I remembered this simple concept. The opposite of adversity is opportunity. Believing that if I focused my mindset around identifying potential opportunities versus drowning myself in the adversity of the crisis, I could take advantage of them and grow my business. In 2009, we leveraged the emerging social media market as it gave us a free platform to market ourselves and the company. Our local competition hadn't embraced these platforms yet. We decided to go all in. We automated communication so our messaging went to multiple channels and platforms like LinkedIn, making us appear very active in the marketplace. The results of our efforts landed us with an opportunity to bid on a very large contract with a local bank. We ended up winning the account by beating out a much larger national competitor who had maintained the contract for the past decade. This was a critical step to growing our business in a difficult time. The opposite of adversity is opportunity. As COVID-19 began to spread throughout the United States and the concept of shelter-in-place mandates were being discussed, I immediately turned to this simple concept. I quickly began embedding this phrase with the 250 associates in my organization by sending them multiple messages around it. Everyone quickly rallied around the concept. One of the opportunities we quickly realized was our remote work capabilities. Unlike most of our competitors, we were positioned to run our business entirely from a remote environment. We moved to all 250 associates to a remote work environment on March 18th. We built business intelligence to support managing a remote workforce. Fast forward to the current state, we are now 42% more productive in a remote work setting versus everyone working in an office environment. We also leveraged our remote work capabilities and quickly developed a marketing campaign to showcase our advantages. While this industry is showing a 35% decline in revenue, we are beating the national average by over 20%. The opposite of adversity is opportunity. Thank you.
Wow, thanks, Aaron. Next up, we have Tony Shipley, the chairman of the Angel Capital Association, presenting a critical link in a post-COVID-19 world.
Good evening, folks. As we transition from our intense focus on conquering the current pandemic toward rebuilding our economy, one of the most pressing questions is, how will we create the necessary jobs to get people back to work and their livelihoods? I believe one important answer is startups. As bad as this pandemic has been for humankind, not all the devastation caused has been negative. Some is what economists refer to as creative destruction. History teaches us that seemingly devastating problems can also lead to emerging technologies and new ways to think about all the things we do. Who capitalizes on such opportunities? Well, in a word, entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the social force that transforms the rubble of destruction into new ventures and new ways of doing things and leverages them to power job growth. We know from experience that our innovative entrepreneurs will be key to leading the way toward economic stability. Data from the past several decades illustrates that for any 25-year period, all net new job growth is created by companies that are 0 to 5 years old. Think about that for a moment. I believe it's safe to say that entrepreneurs will once again lead us to new job creation in this critical time period. To power these entrepreneurs, angel investors will couple their capital with their vision, experience, and leadership to help entrepreneurs navigate the issues inherent in starting and growing important new businesses. 14,000 professional angel investors who make up the Angel Capital Association are a critical link in supporting these entrepreneurs. Some of the best companies are formed through adversity, and they make some of the best investments. Now is the time to lean in and invest in the next generation of job-creating companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Next is Claire Coder, the CEO of AuntFlow. She will be presenting People Still Menstruate.
Hello, my name is Claire, and I am the founder and CEO of AuntFlow. And I started this company after getting my period in public without the supplies I needed. And like most who get their period in public without the supplies they need, you're sitting on the toilet. If you haven't been there before, let me walk you through it. You're sitting on a toilet and you're trying to find a quarter because the only way to get a tampon is finding a quarter to use those archaic coin-operated dispensers. And in this moment of despair, I was thinking to myself, if toilet paper is offered in public places, why aren't tampons and pads? And that's why I founded AuntFlow. So we designed a tampon and pad dispenser to dispense our 100% organic cotton tampons and pads. And this was all fine and dandy. We were growing. We stocked all of Twitter and Google and Viacom and Princeton and Penn State and all of these public places. And it was really fantastic. And then the pandemic hit. So our business model of selling menstrual products to public spaces wasn't so hot. But we did look at the resources that we had. We manufacture medical devices, that's tampons, and FDA-approved products, that's pads. And we looked at our supply chain, and we actually retooled our pad manufacturing to make FDA-approved 3-ply masks. And leveraging our connections within the industry, before we knew it, we were supporting the state of Michigan, Veterans Affairs, small businesses as they reopen across the country with our additional sister company, WorkFlow, to keep things flowing. But the most interesting question that I have been asked throughout this pivot is, well, Claire, are you still making menstrual products? And that is how I come to my one crucial thing and my one crucial answer, that yes, we are still making tampons and pads because menstruation doesn't stop for an international pandemic. And that's my one crucial thing.
Thank you, Claire. Next, we have Mike Conley, the CIO of the Cleveland Cavaliers, presenting, are you a solutions provider or a problem solver?
More late nights, more calls, more sacrifices, do more with less. Everyone needs to lean in more. We need to be more comfortable being uncomfortable. Those are the words, phrases every entrepreneur has been told at some point in the startup journey. My industry woke up on the morning of March 11th not shouldering any of those worries. We had a product that was widely popular, proven, reliable, dare I say, bulletproof revenue model. The future was bright. But one statement released at 9:30 p.m. changed all of that. The NBA is suspending play following the conclusion of tonight's schedule of games until further notice. You see, we woke up as an industry on the morning of March 12th feeling different, feeling weird, feeling vulnerable. We had to now reinvent ourselves. We had to think differently. We created committees and subcommittees around every aspect of our business. Everybody was asked to bring solutions to the table, to aggressively hunt down best practices for similar industries. Collaboration was taking place at the league, team, and interdepartmental level of every business. Yet, no progress was being made. We were facing a new challenge, a challenge that had no solution. Fast forward nearly 3 months and still basketball concerts, hockey, or family shows are taking place at venues and field houses across the country. So why? Based on what we controlled, what was stifling progress? We have plenty of solution providers. We have plenty of hunters in the field. We have enough hogs on the roster to get it done. What we were missing was the ability to think and operate like an entrepreneur. We didn't focus on the problem and instead spent all of our time lining up solutions and best practices to a problem we knew nothing about. What we've learned is that people and businesses that focus on solving problems and farming concepts and ideas effectively through their available channels will be the ones who get us through this pandemic. So I personally want to say thank you, entrepreneurs and startups, for reminding us that we need to be nimble and more open-minded to new ideas and models. I will always take a problem-solving pig farmer over a solution-driven hog hunter any day, because after all, pigs get fatter and hogs go to slaughter.
Thank you, Mike. Next up, we have Eddie Taylor, the president of Oswald Companies, presenting We Choose Hope.
Thanks, Dan. Actually, Taylor Oswald, and right now I'm grateful that Mike Conley was between Eddie Taylor and Claire Coder, so thank you very much for those comments. I can't say or admit the times I've said hope is not a strategy when it comes to planning. We've all used that phrase many times, which is exactly why I titled this We Choose Hope at this point. We were in the middle of, as so many folks were, planning and performance planning for this year when the pivot began. It may feel like a bit of a dramatization, but hope is what we work to instill in our folks over the last several months. And within that, We've talked about three things, which can coincidentally also begin with an H. We were honest with everyone. We were honest about the things we knew, the things we didn't know, and we wanted to make sure that folks, especially when it came to staffing and staffing levels, that we talked about go from here. And we were also clear that the light will shine in all directions in this process on those who work particularly hard to make us better, and also for those who would attempt to hide during this process. So that was our first element of this hope. The second component was on the humanity of it all. While we didn't get to witness and don't get to witness what happens in the healthcare industry like Dr. Boutros, it changes things when you have employees in Detroit whose family members have gotten awfully sick and in a few cases passed away as a result of this. It got very real in terms of the humanity. So we've made certain that we've honored that along the way for those folks. Finally, through it all, I've reminded everyone that hope can also be about humor. My bad joke collection has grown in intensity and absurdity over the course of time, but I know it's needed for so many of our folks because through it all, we keep promising folks that at the end of this, there is reason for hope. Our business efforts have been remade for all of us at this point with hard work, extraordinary commitment by so many. Hope became a viable and continues to become a viable short-term strategy for us, and we wouldn't trade it for anything. Thanks.
Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate it. Next up, we have Jim McVeigh, the CEO of Cyndx, presenting Is What You're Doing Mission Critical?
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me start by saying, the current pandemic reinforced something that we thought deeply about from the very beginning of when we founded the company. Is what we were doing going to be mission critical and important to people, irrespective of the circumstance we found ourselves in? Many companies have a multitude of mission critical aspects. It could be the product you offer, it could be the employees that are providing those services, or it could be a critical supplier that ensures you're able to do what you need to do. The one critical thing I think we learned through this is if you're not critical to your customers, you're at great risk to being eliminated. You don't have to think back very far to the beginning of COVID, when the first thing VCs were saying to all of their companies was cut all non-essential personnel, cut all non-essential services, and conserve your cash, because they didn't, understand how far and how wide this would go. The other thing we learned was even if you're mission critical today, that can change very quickly. We think back to one of the earlier presentations when people talk about real estate. Real estate used to be a big part of the P&L for many startups. Now with work from home, that's going to be eliminated for many, and for many large companies that have announced, permanent work from homes, that will no longer be an expense that you have to do or worry about. So you constantly have to reevaluate what service you're providing and make sure you're adjusting to that. The other thing we learned was having capital is critical, and we help people identify the right kind of capital for their company. It's not only what the amount of capital you have, but the type of capital you have. I mean, you think about companies in the travel industry that had huge revolvers, but that saw their revenues and their EBITDA overnight go from hundreds of millions of dollars to zero and didn't have the ability to draw on that. They didn't have, obviously, the right capital structure in place, and that's critical for you to be able to provide the services that you need. The other thing I would say is not all capital is equal. You need to have the right strategic partner, and that could be, a corporate, or it could be a VC, someone who understands your business so that if during this time you run into a problem, they can help you solve that and work your way through it. So in conclusion, what I would say is during that period, we learned a couple of mission critical things. One, always evaluate your product, always evaluate your employees, take advantage and trade up during this period if you can, and always focus on your customer and make sure you're critical to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next, Ed McQuiston will, from the COO of Hyland Software, will be presenting Always Be Helping.
I've spent my last 20 years in sales. Like many in my profession, Alec Baldwin's character in Glengarry Glen Ross is my spirit animal when he gives his famous Always Be Closing speech. Maybe you've seen his Saturday Night Live adaptation, Always Be Cobbling. In either case, we are so clearly in a different time. Always be closing feels completely foreign today. Empathy and compassion are required. Information is the new currency. But my one crucial thing is that helping is the priority. Let me expand on that. I hear people talk about post-COVID as the new normal. But on a recent call I was on, the point was made that we are already in the new normal. There's nothing normal about any of this. The question is, what do things look like in the next normal? After a vaccine, after masks. But whether thinking about the new normal or the next normal, asking a person or a business, how can I help right now, is in some ways no help at all. Well intended? Of course. But when nothing is normal and the future is uncertain, how does anyone answer that question? Helping others, teaching others, sharing with others, informing others, that is how we all can help. In my role at Hyland, I've become a voracious consumer of information. Why? Well, like many executives, I am being asked to play the role of Nostradamus, to predict the future. How will the year end up? When will we open offices? How long will this last? To help me prognosticate, I'm participating in more peer calls, calls with analysts, calls with consultants, and yes, calls with vendors who ultimately want to sell me something. But as a vendor, the most valuable thing they can do is inform me. What are others doing? What are my peers doing? What are they predicting? How are others preparing for the next normal? Validate my approach, help me. So I'd like to believe that if my spirit animal, Glengarry, was doing business today, perhaps instead of always be closing, his one crucial thing would be to say, always be helping. Always be helping. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Next, we have Charu Ramanathan, the CEO of vitalxchange. She will be presenting Be an Animal, Follow Your Instinct.
Hello, everyone. I'll be presenting the second crucial thing because Claire Coder already covered the first crucial thing. You smelled the opportunity and you followed your instinct to start a company. Especially as a first-time entrepreneur, you will get a flood of startup guidance, both solicited and unsolicited. I was there with my first startup, Cardio Insight, and felt overwhelmed, insecure, and paralyzed with all the various perspectives I was getting. The last person I trusted was myself or my co-founder. We were slow to make decisions and went against our gut so many times and ended up in suboptimal situations, to say the least. It took us several years to develop the confidence to look internally, and then things started to move forward as we wanted. The one crucial thing that I want to share with you that works especially well under uncertain circumstances like COVID is be an animal, follow your instinct. Don't worry, I'm not giving you unsolicited advice. In fact, I'm asking you to tune into your inner biological strengths. There are 4 laws of the jungle, however. 1, hone your intuition with data, not desire. 2, take the time to understand the context of advice, especially if it conflicts with your intuition. 3, if it smells like BS, most certainly is BS. Red flags must always be heeded. Lastly, every so often, take a step back, do a gut check as you're moving forward fast and furiously as an entrepreneur. This crucial thing is the foundation of making decisions, strategy, hiring team members, and enriching personal relationships. It is also very relevant for my current startup, vitalxchange, a social health platform that enables patients to trust their instincts, find support to gain agency, and advocate for themselves. Something that has become so pertinent in the times of the pandemic. So go ahead, be an animal, trust your instincts to smell out the winds amidst uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Charu. Next, we have Gil Van Bokkelen, the CEO of Athersys, presenting how to get people to check their ego at the door and collaborate effectively. Yes.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Gil Van Bokkelen, Chairman and CEO at Athersys. We're a biotechnology company focused on developing innovative medicines for treating conditions like ARDS, or acute respiratory distress syndrome. ARDS is the leading cause of death for COVID-19 patients that become seriously or critically ill and have to be put on a ventilator. My one crucial thing is focused on how to get people in your organization to check their ego at the door and collaborate more effectively, which is critical to successfully addressing challenges like COVID-19. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever received was from my undergraduate research mentor. after I informed him that I'd been accepted to Stanford School of Medicine, he told me that the most important thing I would learn during my time there would be how to say, I don't know, with confidence. He explained that during my thesis defense, my committee would continue to ask me questions until they asked me something I didn't know the answer to. He explained that most people have a tough time with saying, I don't know. And they try to rationalize answers, or even worse, pretend to know something that they don't really know. But he advised me to take a different approach and recognize that moment as soon as it arrived. Then he advised me to answer by saying, I don't know the answer to that question, but here's how I would propose to go about finding out the answer. Well, I found that to be a very profound piece of advice, and I've shared it with every person that has worked at Athersys since we founded the company about 25 years ago, teaching them how to say, I don't know, with complete confidence. I advise them that our job is not to know all the answers. It's to work together as a team to find the best answer or approach. When people pretend to know things they don't really know, then we trust them a bit less the next time we ask them something. However, when we learn how to say, I don't know, to one another with complete confidence, we're really learning how to be intellectually open and honest with each other. And that promotes more effective collaboration because people can trust each other. When we do that, teams become more effective and we all win.
Thank you, Gil. Next, we have Michal Soclof, Principal of Matrix X, and she'll be presenting Wind Beneath Their Wings, the angel investor's role in weathering the pandemic storm.
As an angel investor and chair of North Coast Portfolio Support Committee, I work with many companies worldwide. Most of these are young and fragile and have CEOs that are leading for the very first time, learning and building step by step. And then overnight, they've been thrown into the added challenge of navigating a worldwide pandemic. The companies we work with will either fail, survive, or thrive. But what will set apart the companies that thrive? A CEO that is leading and not panicking, that is solving problems and addressing issues. But what is the one crucial thing that we can do as angel investors? We can support our CEOs. But how? Well, one answer is money, lots and lots of money. But you know what? That's really not enough, nor is it realistic. Platitudes and cliches, they won't help either. But the young CEOs need strength, they need inspiration, but mainly they need concrete steps and directions. So angel investors, lead your troops into battle. Don't just give directions to the CEO and stay behind. Roll up your sleeves, help them out. Meet with them regularly. Model optimism, but with a good dose of pragmatism. And work with them to act today, cutting costs, mitigating risk, and identifying opportunities. Insist that they communicate with their stakeholders regularly. But the CEO needs to be the one to take the responsibility and the accountability. They need to create and they need to execute the plan. Work with them to quickly redirect, retool, or reroute the product or service that they've been developing. They need to solve a problem that needs to be solved today. That pivot may be the difference between surviving and thriving. But remember that a sense of humor and a kind word can be really critical at this time. Check in regularly with your CEOs. Lighten the mood and show that you care. These young leaders have kids and pets running around their house. They're worried about aging parents. Be empathetic, be respectful, and be understanding of their needs. So angel investors, support your CEOs. Put on your halo and your mask, grab a big bottle of Purell, and help them navigate the pandemic storm by being the wind beneath their young wings. Thank you.
Thank you, Michal. Next, we have Adam Valkin, the Managing Director of General Catalyst Partners. He'll be presenting Stay in the Match.
So, hi from sunny Boston. Thrilled to be here. Thanks to Todd and North Coast Angels for inviting me. I have been active in venture capital and entrepreneurship for the last 20 years, which means I've lived through three crises, 2001, 2008, and the current one. But for the 20 years before that, I dedicated much of my life to trying to be a tennis player. And it did get me to America and to college, but also taught me a lot of lessons for life and business. And one of the key lessons in tennis is that no matter how bad things are, you could be 6-love, 40-love down, you can still come back and win the match, which is great. The flip side of it is it's a very torturous and grueling sport mentally, because every single point you still have a chance to win. And if you don't take any of the opportunities, the pain catches up with you. And I think in times like these, where we are living through a major crisis, potential depression, huge unemployment, likely massive contraction in technology spending, media spending, and many of the things that feed the businesses that all of you have dedicated your lives to building, it means that the way we think about what we're optimizing for has to change. And our business, the venture capital community in general, is very, very focused on growth and pushes founders to focus on growth, growth, growth. But in a time like this, it's not about growth. It's about survival. It's about staying in the match. Because if you stay in the match, then anything can happen. And you buy yourself the chance and the opportunity to survive and thrive in the long term. And by staying in the match and maximizing your runway to continue playing, you essentially give yourself time to figure things out, maybe get lucky, don't out doing the same thing, work, expecting different results, and bet on yourself to improve and develop and scale, and bet on your team to do the same. And if you can, try and learn from the best. Talk to other founders, people that have a lot of experience, and see if they can help you cover your blind spots. But anything you can do to stay in the match at a time like this, I think is the most important focus. And I wish you all luck.
Thank you, Adam. Next, we have Connie Clore, the CSO of Assurant. She'll be presenting No Geographic Boundaries.
Thanks. So I thought Zoom happy hours might be my one crucial thing, but I think that most of you embrace those. So I'm going to talk about COVID hitting every business, and it's now more critical than ever that we put the right people in the right seats. So imagine having the best and brightest in your talent pool, people that can make your company more resilient, stronger, and more profitable. So where do we find these people? Well, we're going to find them everywhere. Spurred by COVID, we had the chance to recruit from a vast talent pool, no geographic boundaries. So think about some of the things that have been said today. We have speakers from across the US for a Northeast Ohio event. We all went remote like that. We have adapted with additional work from home policies, and many of us have also added quality and efficiency metrics as well. So what does that mean for the future of hiring? It means that we can find talent in more places than we've looked before. So we can actually find them in our own backyard. So I believe long-term flexibility is here to stay, which allows parents, mostly women, who are the best and brightest in their fields to remain in the workforce, but also achieves work-life balance. Again, no geographic boundaries. As well, the pandemic has been a technology equalizer of sorts, where people that were uncomfortable using technology tools, they've been forced to adapt. And in many cases, they've become more efficient. So, while we've always thought about technical positions being remote friendly, the one crucial thing that I've learned during this time is that typical office-bound positions, those people have developed the muscles to work remotely. So, when we think about filling our open positions with the best and brightest, and I urge all of you, just like Jen said, level up. So while we look to fill those positions with the best and brightest, remember, no geographic boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Next, we have Mike Walker, the Senior Director of Innovation at Microsoft.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. So I'm a Senior Director of Applied Innovation at Microsoft. And the interesting part of my role at Microsoft is my role is more of a strategic business relationship type of role, where I get the opportunity to engage with the top companies globally. And I'll tell you, over the past couple months, it's been crazy busy talking to a lot of executives, whether it be board of director level individuals, or it be CXOs. And, you know, I have to tell you guys, I mean, there is a lot of anxiety in the industry right now. I mean, let's take a couple industries. Let's take hospitality. As of last week, we just did a global survey. Only 20 to 25% of people feel comfortable staying in a hotel room or hopping on a plane. And that's a global number. The French are outliers and folks from India are outliers, but outside of that, we're all within that range. Or if I'm in the pharma industry, where my supply chain is already stressed and challenged, and I deal with around $200 billion worth of fraud every single year. Now, layer on top of it, I've got to ship some set of things 7 to 7.3 billion people on the planet. Talk about stress on a supply chain. And so what I want to leave you guys with is something that may seem obvious, but it isn't always obvious, and it isn't something that we instantly gravitate towards, which is innovation is what's going to get us out of this crisis. Full stop. And it's going to require us to think about things differently from different perspectives that we haven't thought of before. We have tremendous opportunities. I love how we opened up this session where we talked about optimism. Very optimistic type of guy, and I try to instill that with my clients as well. And you know, you either as a startup or a large company, you have an opportunity to not only leapfrog your current capabilities and accelerate those digital capabilities, but also your competitors. But also don't stop there. Rethink your business model. Think about a platform business model, building a digital ecosystem that's new and revolutionary for your industry. And, you know, like we talked about with the supply chain example, maybe it's reinventing your current one. And so one of the best pieces of advice that I've been given in my career was to think strategically, but act tactically. And that is a key paradigm that I think that we should be taking away from this whole experience is we know we got to do dramatic innovation. So let's do it strategically, but act tactically. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, before I invite Laura Nissen to share her remarks, her closing remarks, I want to draw your attention to the chat field. We dropped a live voting link, or will be dropping a live voting link there, where you can indicate your favorite insight of the event. There's a lot of fantastic insights to choose from. The winning presenter, I think as we announced, will get to direct a $1,000 donation to the COVID-19 related nonprofit of their choice. So please vote now. Laura's presentation is not part of this challenge. So I'd like to just give everyone a quick 10 seconds to go ahead and locate that link. And if you could, start your voting before we formally transition to Laura and give her our full attention. So give you 10 seconds. Okay. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome Laura Nissen, a social work professor and futurist who will discuss futures thinking in a post-normal world.
I'm so happy to be with you. That was amazing. What an amazing collection of people. And I am a futurist and I am a social worker. So I'm going to be talking to you today about futures thinking and how powerful it is. And I hope that by the end of this, you're as excited about this as I am. I think it's one of the coolest things I've discovered actually in my life. The goal is, how do we spark collective imagination, collective intelligence, and collective agility? One of my favorite futurists, Stuart Candy, says the greatest existential challenge facing our human species can in part be traced to the fact that we have underdeveloped practices for thinking possible worlds out loud. How do we think bigger at a time like this? The future, as we have all been talking about today, is here. It is a future many worried about. It's a future many predicted. The future is so complicated, and of course it is unpredictable. It's unevenly distributed. Not everyone is experiencing this time the same way. In order to navigate it, we probably need new ways to think, new ways to operate. And futures thinking is my go-to, and I hope that I can get you as interested in it as I am. Futures thinking connects the past, the present, and the future in some really innovative ways. It helps us learn from the past, make sense of the present as we deal with it, and connect both of these to an arc of meaning and the choices we have about what happens next. Futures thinking helps us unlearn our ways of thinking about what is and isn't possible. And COVID definitely has made the veil between these things especially porous right now. Futures thinking is connected to but distinct from strategy. And I recently learned that the clinical definition of strategy is the gathering of power. I love that, Friedman. Futures thinking or foresight practice is bigger than strategy. It's more agile, and some say it's the future of strategy. It's a newish discipline, newer than sociology, but it does have more than a 50-year history. Futures thinking is about managing exponential change. And as you've all been describing so beautifully, change isn't linear anymore. We can't think in linear ways. It's a philosophy. It's a set of tools and skills. There are thousands of people around the world operating as futurists in a variety of traditions in the public sector and the private sector, very transdisciplinary. The toolkit includes the P's, discovering and imagining the probable, as well as the preposterous futures, taking advantage of imagining probable futures, and steering towards the preferable future. Trends matter. So those of you talking about trend watching and trend spotting and trying to read the proverbial tea leaves, trends are important. But by the time something's a trend, it's already happening. Futurists are interested in signals. What's around the corner from a trend? Things we can't yet see clearly, but we can catch glimpses of. Look around the edges of society and of your business framework. Scenarios are what allow us to explore how different combinations of signals might play out. Classic scenarios to play with are things like a scenario where things get better, a scenario where things get worse, a scenario where things stay more or less the same, and a scenario where a transformation occurs. You know you're in good transformation scenario thinking when you can barely imagine it, because it is technically beyond our imagination. Change frameworks of all kinds are part of a futurist toolkit. There's lots of tools and games to play with ideas that come forth from signals and scenario work, going deeper into dialogic and imaginative activity to unleash new possibilities, new ways to prepare, and a new sense of agency that people feel less afraid of what's around the corner and more empowered to seize the opportunities that might be there. Futurists that I watch and have learned a lot from is Amy Webb. I've linked her Tech Trends report, which I highly recommend. She talks about the 11 macro sources of disruption. And Amy was talking about these long before COVID. But the idea is your organization might be in the middle of this circle, that technology is all around you, and that these other 10 disruptors are all interacting all the time. They're like molecules. They're moving all the time, or atoms rather. They're like moving all the time. What's interesting about this is that they move in sometimes predictable ways and sometimes very unpredictable ways, as we're living through right now. But it's not just a matter of looking at them one by one. It's also playing with and stretching our minds to understand how they're going to intersect. So how will your organization and technology intersect with demographics, with wealth distribution, with infrastructure, with geopolitics? How will those things all collide? As entrepreneurs, it helps get a sense of direction and focus to develop the kind of agility that allows you to think about multiple scenarios at the same time. This can be a great tool to do that. And in the process, makes everybody feel a little more capable, like, okay, I know how to watch for this now. I have a prism, I have a map. Of course, futurists talk a lot about VUCA. Many are saying we live in post-normal times. VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And believe me, when I was at a futures meeting last year and we were talking about, a VUCA world, who could have imagined how VUCA it would get and how fast? But the truth is, by naming it, by understanding it, It's one of the first steps to really learning how to lead through it, how to create change through it. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity are probably here to stay for a while. Things aren't going to calm down. These are the kinds of things that futurists look at. They look at the future of social change, the future of work, organizational life, cities, technology, climate, food, communication, identity, human rights, entertainment and sports, racism and equity, coupling and relationships, and on and on and on. So much more is possible in the future based on all of these different kinds of things. And I urge you to pop into the Institute for the Future, iftf.org, to just look at some of the amazing research work that's being done in all of these spaces. If you develop a sense of agility in these kinds of spaces, you develop the ability to flip from the frightening VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, to a hopeful VUCA, a vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. And as Bob Johansson, one of the previous directors of the Institute for the Future, says, this is going to be the dilemma for leaders of the future. How do we lead through this? How do we lead when there isn't a map? Or to our times now, when the map is sort of disintegrating in front of us. One of my other favorite futurists, Tom Atlee, says things are getting better and better and worse, faster and faster. My true thing, in gratitude and respect for all of you, you need to think like a futurist to thrive in what's ahead. So I welcome you to learn more about that. And thanks for inviting me to your party. It's been nice to hang out with you.
Thank you, Laura. So before I announce the results of the vote, we just want to once again, all of us here at North Coast Ventures, thank all of our speakers for making the time to share your one crucial thing. We also want to thank PNC for sponsoring this event. We want each of you that attended to watch for a follow-up email with a few things. We're going to send a post-event survey. We really want to hear your thoughts on the event, recommendations for future events. We will share a recording of the event in that follow-up email as well. Feel free to share this with all of your networks broadly. We also would like to know if you wish to explore opportunities to become part of our network. We pride ourselves, as Todd mentioned at the opening of the session, in our extensive network of corporate partners, entrepreneurs, and investors. That network not only allows us to pull together programming like this, but also to identify promising investment opportunities and uniquely support our portfolio companies with this type of great insight as well as connections. And so finally, without further ado, I'm excited to announce that the favorite insight winner was Charu. And so congratulations. The nonprofit that she selected to receive the $1,000 donation is IJ, Empowering Youth Exploring Justice. So they will be the recipients of that donation. In the follow-up email, we will also provide a reminder as to how individuals, if you choose, can also make a donation directly to this organization via the Mezu application. Will include details for being able to make that donation. So I just want to, again, thank everyone. That concludes our event, and we hope to be seeing many of you all again soon. Thank you very much.